Well, good evening. My name is Mike Delorenzo, and I'm happy to be here. I really appreciate the invitation to talk to you. I recently retired as Deputy Director of Division Emergency Management. But I'm going to take a few moments to tell you about my career because it could generate some questions at the end of the course. I've kind of had a life in emergency management. I started in emergency management back in 1969 when I was a junior in college. And they were offering a course and in those days it wasn't emergency management. It was the Office of Civil Defense. And the Office of Civil Defense was offering summer jobs for fallout shelter analysts. So what you had to do, and I was in engineering school at Manhattan College in New York, you had to be an engineer and you had to take their course. And once you took their course, they certified you as a shelter analyst. And I worked for the Naval Facilities Engineering Command in 1969 as a shelter analyst, and then I went back to school. Finished college that year, got offered jobs in civil defense, but I was drafted for Vietnam in 1970, and I went into the Army. And I decided, well, if I'm going to Vietnam, I'm going to go as an officer. So I volunteered for Officer Candidate School, graduated from Infantry Officer Candidate School at Fort Benning, but 2 weeks before we were going to Vietnam, they came in and they said the war was winding down, so we didn't need infantry officers. So I had to retrain as a missile officer. I'm a Hawk missile officer, and they sent me to the Iron Curtain. And I was a missile officer on the forward missile line on the Iron Curtain. And a lot of you might not know what the Iron Curtain was, but back in those days, Germany was divided, and you had the Russians on one side and Germans on the other. Wanted to get into my field, civil engineering, so I tried to transfer into the Army Corps of Engineers. They wouldn't let me. They wanted me to stay as a missile officer. So I got out, came home, and got into the civilian side of the Army Corps of Engineers. And at that time, the Army Corps of Engineers was supporting what now became the Defense Civil Preparedness Agency. So there was a detachment of Corps personnel that was working for the regional office, which is up in Thomasville, Georgia at that time, and that's how I came to Tallahassee. So I was working for the Army Corps of Engineers, and my main job was building emergency operations centers. Back in those days, the federal government was building state and local emergency operations centers. They would pay for 50% of the course and of the cost, and that's what I was doing. But in 1979, President Carter formed FEMA, and everyone that was working in the business was kind of sucked into FEMA. So I was transferred into FEMA. I was in FEMA from 1979 to 1999, still building emergency operations centers in the beginning, but then in 1989, I got sent to Hurricane Hugo up in Charleston, and they were having problems with the response operation Hurricane Hugo. So I was assigned to Mayor Carmen Bunch at Ground Zero in Hurricane Hugo on the Isle of Palms, and I did that for 2 months and working there with her. And because of that experience in working with the mayor and the island was totally wiped out, and in working with her, I sort of got tagged to do that. So the following year in 1990, Elba, Alabama was wiped out by a dike failure that surrounded the town. I got sent to work with Mayor Moore in Elba, and I was there for a month working with Mayor Moore, helping to put Elba back together. Then because of that, in 1992, when Hurricane Andrew hit Miami, I was sent down to Miami to be the FEMA liaison to Kate Hale, who was the Miami director at that time. After that, and because of the problems that had occurred, FEMA realized that they really didn't have a response plan. So in 1989, they started working on a response plan, and by 1992, they had a response plan. But the one thing they didn't have was first-in teams. So I worked on a task force with FEMA and developed first-in teams. And what we would do is we'd form at a location near the disaster, and as soon as the disaster effects left the area, we would fly in and see what the damage was. And the first storm we did that was Hurricane Emily in 1993. I took the first in team there. And then over the course of the years in different storms and disasters, I took in the first in team to most of the disasters in the Southeast up until I retired in 1999. But in the course of those 20 years, there was other assignments I had. I was Chief of Operations and Planning for FEMA Region 4 for the Olympics in 1996. And I also was coordinator of weapons of mass destruction for FEMA Region 4 in the Southeast as another job assignment. So I had an extensive career in going into disasters with FEMA. And then when I retired from FEMA in 1999, I came to work for the state of Florida and was appointed State Emergency Response Team Chief, where I ran emergency operations at the state EOC. I did that for Administrator Fugate, who's now the FEMA director. I did that from 2000 to 2006. In the course of that time, I did the 04 and 05 seasons where we had to deal with 4 hurricanes in 2004 and 4 hurricanes in 2005. And also what you're about to see is the video of the EMAC operation in Mississippi. Does everybody know about EMAC, Emergency Management Assistance Compact? Okay, it's something that we learned. When you look at Florida, a lot of the things that we do as operational procedures were an outgrowth of Hurricane Andrew. And over the years, we learned to do certain things. When you see this video of our operation using EMAC and going into Mississippi, that's a key issue. I don't care how good you are. You can have the best emergency management operation that's there. But if you get hit with a catastrophic event, you need to get help from other states. And that's what EMAC does. EMAC was formed in 1995. All the states, the 50 states were signees to EMAC, and all 50 states can call on each other for assistance. So when I was running the state EOC in Florida, I was standing there and not thinking, well, I only have 12,000 National Guard troops in the state of Florida. I could call another state and they would send EMAC, National Guard EMAC forces to help support us, which they have. So the point I'm trying to make here, we're going to see a video, a short video, and I'll set the stage for it. And really what I'm trying to show is the importance of EMAC and what it can do when you're in a catastrophic event. If you're standing there and you see total devastation, you know, it's kind of overwhelming. But what happened in Katrina back in 2005 is that Katrina came in and hit Miami. A lot of people forget that Katrina hit Miami, but it hit Miami as a Category 1. And then it turned and headed up towards the Panhandle. So we thought we were going to get hit in the Panhandle. So what we do is we form task forces to go in, first in teams, to go in and do certain procedures for us to help stabilize the area. Our motto is secure, search, and stabilize in 72 hours. So we had a task force formed to go into Pensacola because we thought Pensacola was going to get hit. Well, Katrina veered to the left. But we saw that it was going to hit Mississippi and Louisiana, and we thought we might get EMAC requests from those states. So we kept the task force in place. And the task force, it was about a 500-person task force. The first wave of that task force was 125 Florida law enforcement. The second wave was about 235 search and rescue personnel. And the third wave was logistics support, so we could provide logistic support to the impacted area. So, and that's key. So the video that you're about to see is a documentary of that operation in the state of Mississippi, and if you could help me.
EMAC is the governor's mutual aid agreement. It's called the Emergency Management Assistance Compact. But essentially, it's a mutual aid agreement between the governors of the states that are members of the compact. There are currently 49 states that are members, as well as the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. This agreement allows the governors to share their resources between each other in times of their emergencies, independent of any other response request from the federal government.
water this morning. This is when they say catastrophes of biblical proportions. To me, this is an example of it.
State of Mississippi requested support from us through EMAC. They assigned us those 6 counties and asked us to coordinate relief operations in those counties.
Because we were taking on a tremendous response role in this process, we made a decision very similar to what we would do here in Florida, is have the State Emergency Response Team fully activated with all of the players, state agencies, local agencies, and volunteer groups working as one team through the EMAC process to support the response in our neighboring states. So when we started this process, it wasn't the day the storm hit or after the storm hit, it actually was occurring the weekend before. And through the agreement, oftentimes when you have an uncertain need, we're able to use a broader description of a mission. So we had a mission to conduct search and rescue in the southern part of Mississippi. Storm hits Monday. By Tuesday morning, the first search and rescue teams from Florida, and many of these were local government teams that were brought up through our state internal mutual aid, were on the ground conducting rescues.
People living in this house rode the storm out. Is this Cedar Street here? Right here.
Right now, we have a Task Force 3 from Hillsborough County, Task Force 4, Central Florida Task Force 5. These are heavy lift USAR teams. Task Force 5 from Duval County, 2 engine strike teams, 50 ambulances, all massed in 3 southern counties of Mississippi doing urban search and rescue. Teamed with those urban search and rescue non-sworn elements are 125 state law enforcement assets that also do search and rescue.
Let me explain what's going on. What we're doing is we're finding a lot of guns and stuff in this debris, and to keep them out of the hands of kids and stuff when everybody starts coming back. I don't need little Johnny shooting little Tommy when he finds a gun laying on the ground.
We were responding not only search and rescue teams, which consisted of our state law enforcement and local fire department search and rescue teams, but also teams we call incident management teams that are comprised of both state and local officials to help the local governments manage their operations.
So they're out of here tomorrow morning.
Our mission coming over into Harrison County was to be able to support the Harrison County Emergency Management and being able to have an effective emergency operations center. The state of Florida brought the organizational skill necessary to make Harrison County Emergency Management strong, and also brought the tools, the tools that are able to coordinate and manage information. And then the last piece, and quite the extraordinary piece, is to be able to push resources, to be able to do the things necessary at a governor level, to be able to get authorization to be able to push resources out of the state of Florida to support the citizens of Harrison County.
We were asked to come in and help them organize their EOC. All their staff was impacted, and this is a catastrophic event. We've got that experience in this group that I brought up, so bring the team up, just settle everybody down, get into our emergency operations routine, and then determine what they need.
A group from Florida, namely Manatee County, showed up and said, "We're here to help. Let's talk." So as they started talking, there was automatically a sense of calm that started to come over some of us because of what they had been through and so many folks in Florida had been through. So they basically came in, did not take over, continued to tell us, "This is your disaster. We're here to help." And my goodness, have they helped. They've come in and set up the command center for us. They have categorized the needs of our folks, and we're at least now starting to see this thing come together and get organized and be manageable.
We go into a county, we don't go in to take over. We go in to support that county because, as Governor Bush will tell you, all disasters are local, and at some point when the federal government goes home, when the state goes home, when the teams that came from outside the community go home, it will be those locals officials, it will be those communities that still will face the recovery challenges. And again, our role there was to support them, help them stabilize, and hand off to them when they were ready to take the missions and come home.
You know, we have never been through a big storm, and they've just been showing me their ways of doing things and giving me better hints of how to make better decisions and showing me the right way.
Because of the extensive nature of the response that was going to take place and the fact that much of the infrastructure was destroyed, we set up a Florida task force, the Stennis Space Center, to provide overall coordination for the Florida teams.
There's quite a few things happening here at one time, but the Florida Forward Area Command Team are helping to manage all of the resources that's been sent from Florida for the relief efforts here in this state. And so the USAR teams, our fire rescue, our health and medical, and all of the services that are coming in, we're helping coordinate those out of this office here.
Well, what we're doing here, this is, I believe, the largest mobilization of NDMS, the National Disaster Medical System, in our history, and we've been around about 20-something years. This multi-state force of roughly 100 people is here to serve the devastated people of Hancock County here in southern Mississippi.
Are they giving like shots?
Well, we only give tetanus shots out for people who have obvious injuries, obvious puncture wounds, things like that.
So we have people here from Missouri, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Iowa, and Illinois.
See that white box just to the right of the stairs?
Yeah.
That's the repeater. Okay.
What we provide is emergency medical services to displaced persons and to any disaster site that is unable to meet its usual needs. This is the worst disaster to ever hit the continental United States. So I won't say that there haven't been bumps in the road, there have been many, but we have been able to provide essential services to these folks. We got in as quickly as was possible without putting our own force in danger. We have seen roughly 2,000 people at this base of operations in 7 days, a total of about 4,000 if you include our outreach activities.
We are here to facilitate civilian authorities, police department and sheriff department, in just maintaining civility in the neighborhood so that there's no looting and provide security for FEMA personnel. It's just about trying to help someone else in need. It's not even about being in the military, it's just doing what you can do to try to help someone that needs some help. We've got the experience. Florida's been doing this. Seems like we're more capable of handling this, and everyone's been able to pull together, work together. We got sheriff's department, forestry, police departments from all over the state of Florida, Florida Highway Patrol, you name it, everything.
The Waveland Police Department suffered a heavy loss. I think they lost just about all their vehicles. They stayed out in a storm because a building filled up with water. So they were, some of them on the roof and some of them hanging in trees. So they suffered very heavy.
Most of us tried to make their way to this side of the tree, water pushing, from the south to the north. As we made our way through the parking lot, there were vehicles all floating in the parking lot. We did have a few people on. You have to think now. There's 14 people out here in this bush. That you look at it now, you just wonder how 14 people clung to this bush and made it. We've had about 4 hours sleep in 4 days, and they said the troops are coming. They're coming. Chill out. We're gonna be here. We'll take care of it. It was like the cavalry coming in. We had Polk County, Orange County. They pulled in, and from that point on, they picked us up by the shirt tails and shook us off, got the water off of us, and from that point on, it was all uphill. They actually saved our lives. It was unbelievable. had a commander from Orange County who was a really neat person. He pulled me to the side and he said, "Chief, what you really need to do is, step back, let us, handle it for you. Get your people that need to get out and go to their family, find their family. Let them go find their family. We'll do just fine." And they did just that. They were so professional, so caring about our needs and the city's needs and all the people here. It was unbelievable, and it will leave a lasting impression on my mind. And I know the city of Waveland would be a lot worse off today if Florida would not have shown up and did what they did for us. It was invaluable. In fact, I don't know where we would be today if it wasn't for Florida.
I think that because Florida went in as a team, not as individual pieces, and we kept the State Emergency Operations Center here fully activated, and the fact that these teams that came back said time and time again that we made a difference, we changed the outcome, we saved lives because of the effort that Florida had learned from our storms last year, that through the Emergency Management Assistance Compact, we were able to bring assistance to the state of Mississippi and those counties that were so devastated by this hurricane.
There's two things about EMAC. The impacted state needs to know the process and how to request that assistance. And the responding state needs to know how to operate under the EMAC system. The reason we did this in Mississippi was in 2004, when we were hit with those 4 hurricanes in 6 weeks. We were activated at the state EOC for 90 days straight, and all 67 counties in the state of Florida were impacted. Just to run the state EOC, I had to bring in 750 emergency managers from 36 states just to run that facility. We brought in thousands and thousands of personnel to help us in that storm, and we have one of the best operations in the country. But as I said before, if you're in a catastrophic event, your back's to the wall and you need a lot of assistance. So our role in 2005, when all this happened with Katrina, it was I could not pay back those 36 states, but we could use the system and pay back a state, and that's what we felt we needed to do because of all the aid we received in 2004. That's one of the principles. One of the principles that came out of Andrew is the EMAC system, that you're not standing there when you're facing a catastrophic event. You're not standing there alone. You've got 50 other states that can back you up, even before you go to the federal government. This is besides going to the federal government and going to FEMA. You really see the value of it, and I'll tell a funny story. Governor Bush was there every day, and he would come in EOC and go talk to different people, and I was sitting behind the front desk, and one morning he was walking across the EOC and he stopped dead in his tracks to talk to this individual. This individual's back was to me. So it was kind of unusual. He usually didn't do that, just stop suddenly and talk to someone. So they talked for a while and then he went on, and so I had to go get up and find out why he stopped to talk to this individual. I tapped him on the shoulder, and as soon as he turned around, I knew exactly why he stopped to talk to him. Because it said Alaska Emergency Management on his shirt. And if we're asking Alaska to come in and help Florida with hurricanes, we're in a lot of trouble. So it just goes to show you, it's everybody coming in. And if you have a system in place I mean, that's the main thing. They come in. If you came to the front table, my operations chief could have been from the state of Georgia, Mississippi, Michigan. I mean, they rotated in so much as far as different states and to help us go, because running 90 days straight in any operation really takes a toll. Any questions on the video or anything you guys saw?
I have a question
Yes.
on UMAC in general. You said that in 2004 you had 36 different states come in and help out. And I know that we're an all hazards planning approach, but obviously people from the West are going to be better at responding to earthquakes than people from Florida. Do you take those specific states' capabilities and then put them into specific places that they would best fit, or do they just help overall?
We do that. We put them into areas where they best fit. In 2004, California was not a member of EMAC. There were only 49 states that were members. But we got assistance from California through a state-to-state agreement, governor to governor. California sent in 2 incident management teams like that. I kept one of the incident management teams in the state EOC to help me, and then I sent one of the incident management teams to help a county. They were there for 2 weeks. Usually the normal tour for an EMAC team is 2 weeks. They came back to check out because there's a coordination going in and then there's coordination going out. And I had an opportunity to sit down with them. And the leader of those 2 teams, he told me, he says, I want to tell you 2 things. Number one, we're going back to California and we're going to push everybody we know to have California join EMAC, because we saw how it was used in the state where the state was impacted. And I said, well, that would be good. He says, the second thing is, we used to think we were number 1. We don't think that anymore. So, and that was nice. He didn't have to say that. He didn't have to say that. But they did go back, and California joined EMAC the next year. And they're very professional. What's happened now is that with all the education that's going on through NEMA and all the courses, when you get people in, it doesn't take long. Each state is different. There's a lot of different, but you have the basics, and you can go into a state EOC or you can go into a county EOC and see just what they're, how they're operating. Between the time I retired in 2006 and 2010, I was asked to go into Kentucky when Kentucky was hit with the ice storm and advise the state director. I went into Kentucky and saw their EOC operations, and they did not use functional, what we use, emergency support functions. They ran their EOC by individual state operations. But if you sit there and you watch for a couple of hours, you can understand just how they operate and then move in and help them. So all states are different, but now basically under NIMS and all the training, most states when you go in, it's fairly simple to bring someone in. If you come into the state EOC, we're comfortable with having someone from Georgia be our ops chief. Georgia, Kentucky. It's getting better. I mean, the profession as it's developed over the years, there's more and more training, more and more education, and it's really that when you go from state to state, there's really not that much difference in the way they operate. Yeah.
I'm actually wondering how you said Florida sent 500 people to help with Katrina. How can you quantify the amount of people or resources that a region that has just suffered a disaster needs? It's really hard, I would imagine, but.
It's hard, but Director Fugate would say if you've seen one catastrophic event, you've seen them all. You get in your mind what's going to be needed. That 500 was just the first. We eventually sent in 6,500 to 7,000 personnel, because you got to rotate them out. You can't keep them there. The normal time you spend in another state is 2 weeks, and you have to rotate the teams and the resources. The interesting thing of that is our warehouse in Orlando, we have enough supplies to go about 2 days, and we sent those supplies in. And we were supposed to get reinforced by FEMA, But then I got a message from the FEMA coordinating officer that the logistical system had collapsed. So what we had to do, and the governor had to do, was ask the legislature to go in and activate our contracts to keep sending resources into the state.
In the video, it was really focused on all the positives, pushing forward. But what were some of the major hiccups that happened? What were the lessons learned from utilizing that EMAC system?
The main thing is that when you go in, that the locals understand what's happening. There are some hiccups in law enforcement. Florida law enforcement officer can't go into Mississippi and do law enforcement. So one of the hiccups that you talk about that's been learned over the years is that the state of Mississippi swore those officers in, to do Mississippi law enforcement. So when that police chief asked that they took over, they were really doing law enforcement operations. The other issues that is logistical support and coordination. We set up the area command at the Stennis Space Center, and we had 6 counties. We brought in, Florida sent in 2 IMTs. So we put an IMT in Waveland, and we put an IMT in Gulfport. Georgia sent in 2 IMTs to 2 other counties. And then New York State sent in an IMT to the 5th county, and the 6th county didn't want an IMT. What we've learned over the years is that you have to have that coordination, with that area command. We were running operations from the state EOC, but we were talking to the Stennis Space Center where they were controlling operations there. So that's a key. And the other key is going in. When you lose communications with an area, and the area is impacted, one of our principles is that we have to reestablish communications in an hour. And the way we do that in Florida is we have recon elements. And those recon elements give us advanced notification of what's going on. What happened in this instance, we had the recon elements in Pensacola. Didn't really have the authority, and we just did this on our own. We sent them down I-10, and we said, keep going until you can't go no more. So they went into Alabama, they went into Mississippi, they went down I-10, and they got to the Louisiana line where they were blocked. They couldn't go into Louisiana. But we knew that I-10 was clear, and we could get resources in. When you're in a catastrophic event, there's a national conference call. FEMA holds a national conference call where everybody gets on, and the impacted states report with their impact, and responding states offer assistance. Well, Mississippi got on that conference call and said, because a lot of the resources in Mississippi were north, and the storm was still going north, they couldn't get south. So we got on that call and told Mississippi, we've got a task force in Pensacola that we can send in. But they said, well, I-10 is blocked. And we said, no, our recon has gone down I-10. And that's when Mississippi turned to us and said, we have an EMAC request for you to go in and do this for us. And we were there for 6 weeks. The operation in there lasted 6 weeks. Any other questions? Well, there's a couple of things that I wanted to cover before we get into questions, and I think we're out of time. The profession has changed so much over the years. And I remember working in FEMA in the early years in 1970. You'd go into an office, and I had the whole Southeast. You go into a state and office and look for the EM director, and I kid you not, I went into an office, and the EM director, I couldn't find him, and I went into the back room, and he was asleep on a couch, and he was 97 years old. And that was in the early 70s. Nowadays, you walk into an emergency management, and the guy behind the desk could be a PhD. That's how much the business has changed, and with all the education. But over the course of doing this and going into a lot of events, one of the things, you have the plans and procedures, but always expect the unexpected. And you could be in a small operation and all of a sudden things change. And I wanted to cover that with you. And several years ago, there was a FedEx jet that crashed on the Tallahassee apron at the airport. And it landed about a half mile short. And it was about 6 o'clock in the morning, I received the first call. And they told me, and they had gotten the pilots out. There were 3 crewmen. They got them to Tallahassee Memorial. There was a fire, and they were dealing with the fire. We've got a really good response community in Tallahassee. They work well together, especially in events of that nature. So they had it under control. So I'm getting in the car and going to the EOC, and they really don't need any state assistance. They got the pilots out. It's a matter of controlling the fire and cleaning up. And then the National Transportation Safety Board was coming in to investigate. I got to the EOC. I was just getting out of the car at the EOC, and I got the second call. And they said, "We're backing away from a fire." And I said, "Why are you backing away from the fire?" He said, "Because the firefighters have radiological pagers on, and they're going off. So there's radiological material on board that aircraft." So now I had to go to the Department of Health, state agency who has radiation control, to help them with what was on that aircraft. Still not a big deal. I went to them. They were going to take care of it. A little while later, I got the third call. They said, "We've got to back out of the scene." And I said, "Now what's wrong?" He said, "Well, there's classified documents on board that aircraft, and there's very few people in the state that have clearances to handle classified documents." So now it's escalated. I went to the FBI office here, and they have evidence collection teams, and they all have clearances. And so I asked a favor. That's the whole thing. Lots of stuff are done by favors. And they went out to the scene and helped them collect all the classified documents. Still no big deal until I got the fourth call. And then I said, "Now what?" Because I'm expecting it now. And they said, "You'll never guess what was on board that aircraft." I said, "Tell me." Qualifying papers for the November election for several individuals. And now it becomes an incident where I have to go to the governor, because that was qualification day. And now I have to go to the governor, ask him to issue an executive order to extend that time frame, because all those documents were on board that aircraft. And he did, and I've got an article where you can read about that. Yeah. So something simple can go and develop into something where I never thought I needed an executive order. Usually you don't, for an incident, you don't need an executive order. You need them for hurricanes. Second thing, even being in this business all the time, you have to deal with rumors. And the best rumor, I've had to deal with a lot of rumors, but there's one about me. I was point for FEMA with Kate Hale at the Miami-Dade EOC on Hurricane Andrew. If you look up urban legends, there's an urban legend. And in that urban legend, the FEMA person that was there, which was me, purchased refrigerated vans and used the Burger King refrigerated vans to store hundreds and thousands of bodies, and he took them out into the Everglades and buried them. And the thing is that we didn't want to admit that all these people got killed. Well, I've got the article here if anybody's reading on it. The Miami papers researched it. We had 44 fatalities. And the reason I did purchase vans, and the reason is that if you're in a community and it's got a fatality count over 10, and their mortuary services, a lot of communities can't handle more than 10. But in Miami, a lot of facilities got damaged. So they needed a way to storage those fatalities. But it was 44 individuals, not thousands. So that urban legend. But it helped me that being in that helped me because one night I was going out to Seattle. I had a long flight and I had to teach when I got there. I wanted to get some sleep on the aircraft. So I took off from Atlanta, and as luck would have it, I had a guy next to me who all he wanted to do was talk. And all I wanted to do was get some sleep. So and he's from Miami. He starts talking and he starts, oh yeah, I was in Miami for Andrew, and he goes into all this stuff. And you know, he's talking and talking, and he says, well, who were you with? I said, well, I was with FEMA in Andrew. And he's talking, and you know, there's a guy that was there, and he got these vans, and he buried all these people out in the Everglades. I said, really? He says, what did you do? I was that guy. So he shut up, and he didn't talk to me for the rest of the flight. So it kind of worked for me. But there are principles. I think the main thing is that, and what gets me upset is I see current disasters. These principles are there. They, you know, over the course of years, and all these different disaster events, and especially in Florida, we developed our operational principles based on what we learned in catastrophic events. And they're there, and what gets me sometimes is when they're ignored. You have to do evacuation. You have to establish communications. And I'll give you an example, Hurricane Charlie. When Hurricane Charlie was coming up in 2004, it was supposed to go in Tampa. Well, it didn't. It made a sudden right turn and went into Charlotte County. And why we were so concerned about that. We're concerned because Charlotte County didn't do a hurricane evacuation for a Cat 3. They just did a low-level evacuation. We had 3 hours, and Charlotte County was trying desperately to get people to evacuate. So Charlie goes in and impacts. And at the state EOC, we lose communications with them. And that was really critical to us. We didn't know what was going on. So Administrator Fugate, who was Director Fugate, then decided to take in the first response team that we had, our incident management team, with the vehicle you saw, and hit the road. What was happening to Charlotte County is their EOC was getting destroyed. That's why we lost. And as we were trying, they were relocating to the sheriff's office that had room for them. But when you don't know what the situation is and you haven't done an evacuation, that you know, and it wasn't their fault. I mean, it was the storm just for some reason took that hard right turn. That's critical, because what you think is you're going to have a high fatality count. When you're doing hurricanes, the fatality count should be somewhere from 10 to 40. Usually, it shouldn't be any larger than that. And you want, and what's your main goal? I mean, what does emergency management do? What's our job?
Save lives.
Save lives and protect property. Number one, but there's a number two to it. What we do as a profession, we make order out of chaos. I don't know how many times I had to walk into chaos, but your job is making order. When I went into Elba, Alabama, Elba was under 18 feet of water for 3 days. The entire town was wiped out. So that's your role. You make order out of chaos and save lives and protect property. I think we're running. Any questions? Got some time for some questions.
What's the best advice you can give to a young person that wants a career in emergency management?
The first advice is, and this is personal to me, if you're in school, go as long as you can go in school. Get your master's, and if you have the opportunity, go get your PhD, if you can. I have a bachelor's degree in civil engineering, and the thing of it is, you say in your mind that you're going to go back, and there were several times, and every time I went back to try to get it. Something got in the way. I was going to get a master's in soil mechanics from Georgia Tech, and I couldn't. Something got in the way. I was going to get I was going to even get a master's from FSU, and I had it all arranged, but then their rules, I couldn't do it. And most of the time I was out in the field. 1 year I spent 286 days on the road out of 365 in doing disaster work. But that's the first thing. Get as much education as you can. If you can intern, I mean, we have an intern program, get a job, but you can intern really anywhere in the state now. Try to get an internship, because a lot of our employees were one-time interns, and that's a good way to start. And that's really, I wasn't an intern, but I was a summer hire and that's how I started. So get your foot in the door and then see the operations. But the biggest thing is and you may for your career, and I don't know if you want, is a thing we call homesteading. You stay in one location. A lot of the people that have worked for me over the years, a lot of young folk, have gone to other states. I lost my terrorism coordinator to Ohio. We just lost a meteorologist to Oregon. It seems like the state EOC is a training center, and then we train people and then other states grab them. So, but that's I don't know if that's, but I would do that. And now, which you didn't have in the old days, go online. FEMA has jobs online. There's a lot of advertisement now that you didn't have in the old days. So keep searching those websites and see what's available. And if something comes up, even if you have to move, you might have to move and go to another location.
Having worked at the state and the federal government, what would you say would be the biggest differences and similarities between planning for events?
Well, the state, you got 50 different states, but you got one federal government. And it's a different mindset. And I'll even bring in local government. When I left the federal government and came to the state, I didn't think I would have problems in understanding operations and what was going on, but I did. And if you leave the state and go to local government, you're going to have, it's not the same. If you think federal, state, and local are exactly the same, they're not. Planning, I think the immediate planning is different. I always tell it, and that's the reason why we have supplies in Orlando at a warehouse to cover us. Because if you expect FEMA to be in there in the first 24 hours with supplies, that's a push. So a lot of the planning you do at the state level is getting in there quickly. We say, going in with the recon teams, having those recon teams available with communications to get in there quickly. FEMA will come in. FEMA will locate an incident management team in the state EOC. But really, the difference is you're hands-on. What's your job? Your job is support that local EM director. That's your job, and that's what you do at the state EOC, to try to support that local director as much as you can. And that's FEMA's job, is to support the state supporting that local director, not to take over. So that's kind of the different mentality when you look at how the operation goes. Has everybody been to the state EOC here? Okay. All right. Any other questions? Yes.
Would you say you were more, or what experience did you like more, or do you think defined you more career-wise, of all the experiences that you have had in emergency management?
That's kind of hard.
Yeah.
'Cause, I'll give you an example, and especially if you're going to have a career in emergency management. One disaster I went was on the Goshen church tornado. Excuse me for a second. I don't know, the tornado hit, and it hit on a Sunday when they were having church services. So the church there got wiped out and killed, I think it was 30 people. So I was there working that disaster. And one day, I was walking to a meeting at the school, and someone grabs me and shoves me into a wall because I was wearing my FEMA shirt. And it was the principal of the high school. And, I was shocked, that happened. So I said, what's wrong? She says, one of my students, their whole family got wiped out, and FEMA's not helping them. And it was hard because I knew what the operation was, what we had going. So I said, is that girl here? And she said, yeah, well, go get her. Let's talk to her. So she brought the girl over, and I said, well, you lost everything. You lost your house. And she said, yeah. I said, and FEMA's not helping you at all? She says, no, they're not. And I said, well, why did they tell you they won't help you? Oh, the Mennonites are there. And the Mennonites came in, and where FEMA will go in and give you some assistance, but they don't give you total assistance. The Mennonites came in to give her total assistance. And so you can't get both. So they decided to go with the Mennonites. So, excuse me, I turned to the principal, and she didn't say a word. She just walked away. And the thing of it is, sometimes in this business, there are hard things that happen, but you have to understand that these people have been impacted by disaster, and that's the whole thing. You're there to help them. It's not about you. You're there to help them and do what you can for them. Any other questions?
Yeah, I got one. What are going to be the biggest challenges that emergency managers are going to face in the future?
I think the biggest one they're facing now is sustainment. You can build systems, but you have to sustain them. And when you don't get hit with major events, it's hard to get the money to sustain those operations. And I think that's the biggest challenge. When WMD came about in 1999, there was a lot of money. There were over $100 million coming into the state. And now I think it's down to about 25 million because nothing's happened really major. And we built all these systems. So now you're going to have to kind of get other resources to fund those systems. In the old days, we had all those white powder incidents. So we bought equipment for the responders to go in and determine whether it was really something you had to be concerned about. But a lot of equipment's getting old. There's a lot of things that are getting old, and the money is drying up. So I think sustainment, it's not only sustainment of equipment, it's sustainment of people. We have a hurricane exercise every year, statewide hurricane. But the longer you go without getting hit, and we haven't been hit in 11 years, you can get a lot of experience from an exercise, but it's not like playing a game. I mean, you go to any team, you can practice, but it's not like playing a game. And that experience, and that's one of the problems we have because there's not a whole lot of people that have a lot of actual experience. So, well, I appreciate the opportunity. I mean, emergency management, there's some things, but there's positives. When you go in and you go back to a community and they remember you and how you worked with them, there are a lot of positives. And Florida has made a difference in a lot of areas, and Florida does have a good system in place. So it's rewarding. It's difficult at times, but it is a rewarding profession. It really is. And like I said, go as far as you can, get the degrees you can, and then go out and get some work experience.